Hi and welcome to this video. So this time I want to talk a little bit about my mixing process of my album Chaos Theory and why it's also a little bit connected to the arrangement process, but also the mastering. And also there is something that I want to mention that is, in my opinion, very important when it comes to mixing in general. So when I see topics about mixing, it most of the time revolves around specific presets for plugins or specific routines or let's say recipes. So why do I say recipes? Because I like to compare mixing with cooking. And if you just cook with a recipe, you always get one specific meal done. However, when you are writing a track, it depends on the key, it depends on the instrumentation, it depends on the arrangement, and the outcome will always be a little bit different. So if you're just using plugin presets or specific recipes, it may work, but most of the time it doesn't. So let me explain with another cooking example here. So if you're saying you always use 2 spoons of salt on your final meal, out of 10 meals it can work 3 times. But what happens if you're creating, for example, a fruit salad or something with yogurt? Maybe the salt is not really appropriate because you may want to use honey and cinnamon, for example. So I think it's more important to know what's inside your shelf of spices that you want to use for all of these meals you're cooking, and you always want to come up with the right one for each of your meals. So I hope this little example made sense. Basically, I want to say that it is very important to understand all of these plugins, and not just the plugins, but also the settings, every slider and every knob, what they are doing, and how to shape the track that you're currently working on. And now let's take a look at my track when light gets in. Okay, so let me play you the track first. Okay, so I don't want to go through each of these individual instruments here, but just through the sections or whenever I did some, processing. So let's take care of the strings first. So these are the plugins I've used for the strings. So let's just take care of the dry tracks here. So basically I applied a little bit of EQ. What I wanted to do is basically get rid of that little harsh, scratchy sound that strings produce. I also wanted to sound a little bit more expansive and to create a little bit more distance. And I think this can be, kind of like achieved by dipping down a little bit around 4K. So otherwise, I like the strings as they were, or as they are. Also, I applied a little bit of compression here. Not that much going on, and also a little bit of air EQ here to just give it a little bit of more boost around 15K here. So actually, I know somebody mentioned it in the comments of my last video. It's actually where the high cut is happening, but I always feel when you cut it at around like 15 kilohertz, sorry, also around this area before the cut, there is the most action going on. I don't know if that's right. I could be wrong, but it just sounds like it, and it does what I want to achieve for this track. So let's listen to how this sounds. So as I said, just a little bit on the silk, a little bit of silk on top. Last but not least, we have Seventh Heaven reverb. I used the Sanders Hall. The mix is around here, minus 12 dB roughly, and it sounds like this. Okay, so just creates a little bit of space. That's it for the strings. So before we get into the brass, I just wanted to let you know that instrument-wise, there is not really that much processing or EQing or whatever going on. It is most of the time balancing between all of these different instruments to create, let's say, sections that make sense for the entire mix. Okay, so let's head into the brass here. And let me disable the plugins. So what I basically did was applying multiband compression. I think I've used a preset for this one, but I changed it. So because I wanted to have, let's say, this kind of curve to add a little bit more bass, a little bit of more, kind of mightiness, but also some high frequencies here. And I just get a dip on each of these frequencies to just melt this a little bit together. Or basically, it's wrong to say dip, but I just wanted to apply a little bit of threshold to just press each of these frequencies down and make it a little bit more, balance them a little bit more. So let me just turn this on here. So you can see when I go through these sections one by one, you can see how I, kind of like processed these individual bands by just changing the threshold. So it's not too much or too less. And then you kind of like create this shape here. So there's a little bit more happening here. So it's basically just reducing the peak a little bit, balances it a little bit more, and then kind of like, since it's a multi-band compression, you just move up the individual bands, some sort of like an EQ to create the sound that I wanted to create. So next in line would be some reverb. I used again the Sanders Hall. Sometimes I use different halls, it doesn't matter. What sounds good sounds good. And I also raised the dry-wet ratio a little bit more, so that brass is a little bit more wet than the strings, and it sounds like this. So it's also pretty nice to hear because not just this reverb, the Seventh Heaven, but in general, but on the Seventh Heaven reverb, it's a little bit more extreme because I find the coloration is pretty beautiful. So at a specific point, when you just play around with a mix ratio or with a mix button here in general, the knob, you can see some coloration happening on the signal. It's just not getting wetter and more reverb. It's also colorizing the signal. So let me just play this again. Pretty cool. So that's it for the brass. Okay, so let's get into the percussions here. And there is one instrument here that is, so in this case, I'm just naming it's just like Arc 1 Epic Percussion Ensemble. It sounds like this. It's not doing much. So I got some EQ going on, and I just wanted to get rid of this frequency here around 200 Hertz. Because I feel it sounds a little bit less oomph and there is not too much tonal stuff going on. So I think I always can reduce that. So this is one of the few things that I think that works almost every time, even though most of the time it's around 200 Hertz. So in this case, like 167. So this is why I say you can't always say you can get rid of, let's say, the tonal elements of percussions by always reducing 200. Sometimes it's around 160, maybe sometimes it's higher, maybe sometimes it's lower. It totally depends on the track itself. So the next instrument where something is happening is this one here. And we have the Decimator drums by Audio Imperia, and it does something like this. So what I did was applying EQ again. I just did a little dip here. Again, to just simply create this impression of sounding a little bit more noble and, you know, kind of like get a little bit away of that, get rid of that scratchiness. Basically the same like for the strings, but yeah, just this time for percussions. So another thing here is that I also used Seventh Heaven reverb again on this one, and I also skipped this one. I will talk about this in a second. Let's do this. Let's do this right now. So let me just play this without reverb here. So it's the large wooden room. Just to create a little bit more, room. So let's hop over to this track here again. So again, we have Fab filter, and then we have like the EQ, and then we have a little bit of Seventh Heaven reverb again. I also use the large wooden halls, or wooden room. Let me see if I just used the same patch. So basically, I just raised the ratio again here. So it's a little bit wetter here. So let's listen to how this sounds. So just creating a little bit more room. So that's it for the percussion section here. So there is no more processing going on for the percussion section. So let me just play this again, the group, and then talk about what I generally did. So let's turn this off. Let's play the full percussion section here. So again, we got an EQ curve going on, and it sounds like this. So again, so to let you know what I did, because I don't want you simply to see a curve and say, hey, this sounds great, and then you use it for your track and it may not sound great, because the simple reason is that I've used a specific combination of instruments, and as I said before, with a meal, the outcome is always different. So what I try to do is get a little bit rid of this 100K here again, 100 Hertz, get a little bit rid of this tonal elements, then raising a little bit here because I wanted to stick it out a little bit through the mix, and I felt it worked best at this frequency. And then again, getting into that little dip here, because I didn't want to have too much of the high frequencies, because I just wanted to leave room, for example, for the horns, for the choirs, and so on. It's just a little bit. Let's listen to how this sounds again without. Okay, so hope things are obvious. And the next in line here is another virtual mix rack, and it's basically just the 4:1 compression here. And let's play how this sounds when I turn it on. Okay, so please be reminded that I also used a little bit of makeup. I mean, not me, but I just raised it to like plus 4 dB to make the signal a little bit louder. So sometimes I don't mind if I just use this, you know, like the volume fader or just a makeup to add some dBs here. But basically there's a little bit of compression going on to just glue all of these elements together. That's it. Okay, so next up would be the synth section. So let's see what is going on here. And you can see that I also applied, I'm sorry for jumping around with my windows here. So you can see that I just used one EQ again here, and I just raised a little bit around that area to just bring up the mids a little bit and get rid of the very high frequencies, and also dip down a very, you know, steep dip down here below, or basically like a low cut, cutting everything away below around 30 hertz. So it sounds like this. Okay, that's it for this section. And there is a little bit of processing going on each of these, but it's just minor stuff. So let's listen to this thing here. Let's turn off that EQ. So I just tamed down. You can really see it, that there is some jump going up here. And I just wanted to get rid of this. But also getting rid of a little bit of these higher frequencies around 2K, because again, I feel that instruments most of the time sound a little bit more noble, more expensive when they're when the let's say the mid frequencies or the higher mid frequencies, something around that area is reduced a little bit. I could be wrong, but this is how I felt sounded, you know, suitable for the track. So next in line, we got this little thing here. And we got a little bit of Fab Filter Timeless on top, so it sounds like this without. So it basically adds, if I'm not mistaken, there is also delay happening on this patch inside repro that I'm using, inside the repro instance I was using here. And I just put a little bit of Timeless on top, so I was just talking right into that tail. I'm sorry. So it basically takes not just the entire signal, but also the previous delay that is already happening inside Repro 1 and just plays around with it too. So that's it basically for the synth. Okay, so let's talk choirs. We talked about this in one of my previous videos, but I quickly wanted to jump on that. So basically I'm using the same principle, but of course you have to adapt for each of the tracks. So this is how the choir sounds. Okay, so again, let me just pull these up and line it up on the screen here. So again, a familiar combination. This is, let me just mute these, bypass these, and play them again. So raising a lot of high frequencies, getting rid around this entire humbling, mumbling frequency that is going on around 400 hertz. I always You know, I just listen to these things, and that's why what I try to say also many times in this video, that I just simply don't go for, if there is choir, always dip down 400 hertz for like -5 dB. It's just something that I hear, that I feel in this moment makes sense, because I wanted to create a little bit more so it feels like this entire, frequency or range of the frequencies that I wanted to dip down take away too much information for the other instruments I want to breathe during this section or during that part of the track. So I hope that makes sense. Also, next in line would be compression. This is a lot happening here. As always, I think compressing these, these choir sections to death, because adding reverb again on top, a lot of it, again using the center saw, but I think I raised a little bit of this of the reverb time. I'm not really sure right now. You could check back, at a previous spot of the video, but it sounds like this. So it's kind of like swimming in that reverb right now, and also it gets rid a little bit of that compression, of that too much. Basically, it's definitely too much compression, but this is getting reduced by the reverb. You don't hear that pumping effect going on, but because I'm extremely compressing it, I feel like the choirs really stick through the mix, or stick, just become more balanced. So that's it for the choirs. Okay, so let's talk about the next section here, and this is drums. So we have a little bit of a funny thing going on here. So just to remind you how this sounds inside the track, let's listen to that at this point. So it's just a little gimmick to give a little bit more, drama or tension to that track at this spot. And what I basically did and how it sounds without it's like more processing, sound design. This is how it sounds. So I put some kilohertz KHS filter on top, and it sounds like this, and also some Seventh Heaven reverb. So that's basically it. I mean, this is more sound design related, but just wanted to show you this. So let's listen to what's going on in the drums department here. So we got some electronic drums going on here. There is not really processing going on. And then let's hop over and see how the section sounds in the last part. So there's this Medusa kit going on. There is nothing on it, but on the entire section, we just have a little bit of this weird curve going on. So let me bypass this. This is how this entire section sounds. So I just didn't want to sound it natural in a way. I just did this kind of weird curve because this exactly gave me the sound that I wanted, that it sounds a little bit more drum loop-like. And also getting rid of all the low frequencies here because I already got lots of percussions going on. Okay, so next up would be hits, and we got 4 tracks going on that involve hits. So let's see how this sounds here. So it's basically just a combination of different libraries, and there is a little bit of processing going on, but it's basically just a little bit of Valhalla shimmer on one of these patches. And let's check out what the one with EQ is doing here. So this is the sub hits from Gravity. They sound like this. So what I wanted to do is get rid of the very, very low frequencies, because I didn't want to, you know, go into the sub department here for these, but just use these elements to just add a little bit of more weight. Okay, so actually there's one instrument in the middle that is completely different than all the others. It's that little piano here. And if we just listen to the piano real quick, there is a little bit of processing going on, but I think this is important to mention. So without, it sounds like this. So I think it's a Nexus patch, and what I did is basically introducing this frequency curve, because I really wanted to sound it stingy and high to cut through the track. The next in line would be a black hole reverb to just really float through the track. And then last in line, last but not least, compressing it to death again, so it really brings out all the details and nuances and sticking through the track. And also most important, that the compressor is coming after the reverb, because I really also wanted to compress the reverb and bring up all the details that the reverb or the black hole does to the piano. Okay, so the last section is the effects section, and there is actually not really processing going on. It's just all kinds of sounds from libraries. Just some balancing is happening, as mostly for all of these individual instruments, and it sounds like this here. So basically just give SFX, right? Not really, yeah, just you know, all the instruments. I basically put all the instruments into the effects section that I can't sort into, let's say like tonal synth or, you know, orchestral instruments or whatever. Okay, so last but not least, let's talk about the mastering. But before that, I want to remind you again, there is not much treatment really going on for each of these individual instruments. It's most of the time just a little bit of EQ correction, some reverb, some compression, not that much. If I think an instrument sounds good, I use it and then route them into the bus sections here. So I will just move over the mixer screen a little bit so you can see the bus section here. And basically all of these instruments are I routed into these bus sections here. And then there is some additional processing going on, but most of the time it's just balancing all of these instruments. Okay, so let's talk mastering. As I said in the beginning of the video, most of the time when I start writing, I already start mixing. And when I get to that point that I reach the, you know, let's say like the high dynamic part, the action and the ultimate ending, the climax or whatever, I already start mastering. And then sometimes it happens that I feel that there is an instrument missing. So I go back and basically into the arrangement or into the writing mode and start adding something. Maybe sometimes I think that a horn line is going up way too high. So I try to come up with another melody or picking another instrument, so all the kind of things. Sometimes I feel an instrument is right and fits exactly, but there is a little bit too much high frequency going on, especially when I already applied the basic mastering. So I don't feel like getting rid of an instrument or just turn it down. I just want to get rid of that frequency because it sounds great with these mastering settings. Again, so I hope this makes a little bit of sense. Also, if you happen to be an audio engineer watching this right now, you may shake your head, but actually I have to say I find it really refreshing to go back to the mix or even the arrangement and change something when the general mastered sound is already that great. So let's check out what I did plugin-wise for the mastering chain. I lined up the first 3 plugins here, and let me activate that one by one by just playing you the final part of that track here. So basically just a dip down below 20 Hertz to simply clean up the mix a little bit. Then we have multiband compression, the dynamic spectrum mapper going on. I will activate that, or I just put it over here so I can just play it back from here. So it kind of glues everything together a little bit more. And last but not least, as for compression, we got some drummer going on. Let me just... So I added a little bit, I turned on this air effect. There is a decent amount of happening, of compression happening. It's the neutral setting. Again, it doesn't really matter what settings exactly I have. The most important thing is that I just wanted to achieve a little bit of compression, and I used 2 compressors because I wanted to multiband limit the entire mix and then put a little bit of a different color of a different compressor on top. Okay, so let's check the second half of the chain. So we have virtual tape machine following, then we have OTT, then I have Neutron going. I'm not ashamed to say this. I just wanted to see if the mix is all right, if it sounds great. And I never, or most of the time, never use the settings that I get with the track assistance. I just check them back and then exchange everything or change everything that I want to change. Next in line would be the invisible limiter. And then last but not least, we have the Oxford inflator. So let me just play back the track and activate these one after another. So I always feel there is a lot of warmth added to the track when using the virtual tape machine here. It could be anyone, but I think particularly the sound of this one works really great. So I love using this one. Next up in line would be OTT. Let me just turn that on. So very subtle settings, depth 6%, just 0.7 dB in gain, not changing the out gain, just adding a little bit of high frequencies, getting rid of a little bit of the mid and adding some low frequencies. And this is how it sounds. It's basically, again, multiband compression, but I just love to have, decent settings with all kinds of compressors and then glue them all together because each of these add a specific color to the final mix. So next in line would be the Neutron. So let's see what it does. And please don't be shocked. You will probably realize that there is a lot of distortion, a lot of crunch going on. I just wanted to have this track sounding like this. In general, the entire album is sounding pretty aggressive. This is the style that I wanted to go for. And you may especially experience this sudden jump of hearing distortion because of listening through the track with all the mastering plugins not applied. So please bear with me, and then it will also change the sound when we activate the limiter here and the inflator. So let's check what the Neutron is doing. Okay, so this is how it sounds. Let's activate the mastering limiter here. And last but not least, let's add some inflator here. Okay, so that's it for this video. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Let me know if this makes a little bit of sense to you, what you liked, what you didn't like. Let me know in the comments below. I would be really happy to hear from you. Also, thanks for checking out my videos and hopefully see you on my next one. Bye.